And we are live.
Perfect.
How's it going?
Going good. How are you doing this fine Saturday morning?
That's pretty good. It's a nice sunny day out.
Beautiful day for a run.
It really is. It really is. So, for those of you, I guess, that don't know, this is Sempai V. All the OG kids and adults, they knew you before they knew me. Um, you were actually one of the people that taught me how to teach, um, and was one of my first teachers when I came back from university. So we've known each other for like it's been a while.
It's been a while. I'd
It's been
say a
a
good
while.
eight, I don't know, 7, 6 years. It's a good while.
Yeah, for sure. So I know today we said we would just kind of have one of our normal conversations just on camera.
Mhm.
One of the things we always talk about is application of what we're doing, and we kind of try to be a little bit skeptical. We try to be a little bit overly analytical about everything that we're doing, just to ensure that we know that it's working. Um, so yeah, I know like back in the day, like Friday nights was like our experiment night. We would like contemplate like, okay,
Yeah.
how are we gonna work some katas in a way where we can test out the efficiency of these techniques and things like that. So yeah, application means a lot to us,
hmm
and I hope when we you know communicate that to our students, they appreciate it as well. Senpai
I
Toyang
agree.
says hi.
Hey everyone.
Awesome.
Hopefully, my video feed is pretty good. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. Okay,
All right.
application. So that's something that I personally have been really striving forward to kind of understanding more. And I find that a lot of black belts might find actually after you get your showdown, that big summit that you reach, and there's a on my Nidan assignment. There was a question why a lot of people stop training after their showdown, after they get their white belt, and at least my answer was the lack of motivation. For the showdown, there was always some kind of there's someone there pushing you. There's something to strive for. That was a big thing in the entire dojo, as some of you, well, I guess most people here on the stream might know.
Yeah.
It's a 6 month process, 4 to 6 month process where every day you're just trying to do your best. So there's all this work that culminated in you getting your showdown, but then at the end, you got it, it's over. And then now what? That's the biggest question. Now what?
Yeah.
And different people find different motivation for continuing. At least people who've continued so far, at least that's what I find. And for a while, for me, now like lately, it's been application. So I personally found that uh, we do a lot of katas, we do a lot of basics, which is wonderful. It's great, and we'll dive into this a bit later on. But then I felt that there was something missing. And as I got to know more people throughout my university, there's a couple of my friends to do it Muay Thai and kickboxing, and I wonder if they're watching right now. You probably know who you are, but just doing that kind of opened my eyes to other styles and how other people do things. And then I try to think, okay, how can we as karate practitioners try to work more in application and the real world applications of our art. And without getting too much detail before I trail on for another half an hour, my point is I find is that just as it is important to put time in working the katas, working the basics, working the part of the karate, it's also important to also make sure that whatever you're doing will and can work. It's applicable.
Right.
And I guess for me, it comes from an engineering background. I like application. I don't like learning things just because they're interesting. I do that as well, but I want to make sure there's some kind of way you can apply these things so that they're useful to you later in life.
Right.
Well, what do you think about this?
Yeah, no, it's true. I think what it comes down to is pressure testing. And again, like you're saying, the basics and the kata, and I think this is something that a lot of karate schools, or especially like I guess more traditional karate schools will struggle with, is they look at one piece of the puzzle, right? So we practice these katas and we focus on biomechanics, and you need to understand biomechanics in order to be able to apply the technique. And the problem I think where a lot of people get discouraged is you can't safely practice application until you fully understand the concepts of the basics. And truth be told, like the stride to fully understand and comprehend karate basics with quality takes a lot longer than a lot of other martial arts. Like when we do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, for example, you're doing a lot more meaningful pressure testing earlier on in the training than you are with karate because it's just not safe. If you don't know how to punch properly, how are you going to start sparring? If you hit somebody wrong, you break your hand, your targeting isn't good, you punch them in the face too hard or something. And there's a higher risk earlier on in like striking arts. And I think people lose that patience where it's like, well, I've been working this, these fundamentals for a long time. When am I going to test it? It's like, well, you can't test it out until you can do it properly. So one of the big things for me though, in terms of application, I think all martial arts suffer from this. And we were talking about this the other day actually, is we look at self-defense as our definition of application. Can this work in a self-defense situation? And the reality of it is all martial arts that do a physical art, like whether it's, karate, if it's kickboxing, taekwondo, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido, whatever it is, they're all focused on the physical component, which is your last resort. You know what I mean? So, in a
Yeah.
nutshell, if you were to ask, like, do most martial arts work in self defense? You can say yes in the worst case scenario. There's a whole other graduation that happens up until the physical confrontation. So, I think that if, like, a martial arts studio is going to put self defense on their wall, they need to be talking about the entire spectrum, which is verbal de escalation, composure, how to keep your cool when someone's getting in your face. Um, and when and how to walk away, when and how to run away, escape tactics. And then something that I've been looking into, that I want to pursue a little bit more, is even like, okay, we live in Ontario, Canada. What are the laws in terms of self-defense? What are we allowed to do to protect ourselves that's not gonna cause us more trouble when we have to face the music after? So in terms of application, I think that a lot of martial arts, we're so focused on one piece of the puzzle, and it's because that one piece of the puzzle takes longer to master than the other pieces.
And yeah, I agree exactly with you, especially on the part well you mentioned about the laws. That's like a very important aspect, especially considering that people who train these arts they are considered trained, and there's different applicable laws to self defense that go with
Right.
that. That being said, I am personally a good proponent of there's a famous saying down south. It's not applicable to the situation, but in general, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Right.
So when push comes to shove, you know what? Forget about just get out of there, make sure you're safe, and that's where the physical aspect comes in, and that's where the whole applicability comes in. But hopefully we live in a safe country, and we are. I think that that shouldn't happen often, or that should almost never happen.
Right.
Ideal world, but let's go with that for now. So I definitely do think that's a very important thing.
Yeah. And
One thing I wanted to mention as well is that you know the as you said applicability of there's other aspects to our training, rather than just physical.
right.
But then with the physical part, the way I at least I think about now, and especially during this quarantine, I think you also had a bit more time to put more into physical conditioning,
Yeah.
and that really opened my eyes to the importance of physical strength and physical conditioning that can bring benefits to your martial art career.
Yeah.
And that really changed my mind in a sense that even now I think whenever a certain person is training, they shouldn't just be training the martial art, but half the time that they're training, they should be also doing physical conditioning. Just
Definitely.
because having that extra strength, having that extra cardio will allow you to get more out of your training. You can focus, well, think of it this way, even. You can focus down your training to smaller pieces, spend more time on those, but you will work it better than if you were to do more things in the same time frame. So
Yeah.
you'll learn better, your body will learn better, thanks to that physical conditioning and the fact that you're spending more time on smaller details. That
For
being said, as much as we would love to work our katas and basics until the end of our lifetimes, and it's not going to be perfect. Perfection is a direction, not a destination. As you said yourself, people lose that focus. they want to get into the punching and physical and all the things, and you have to make sure you work it up to it first. You don't jump straight into it. Um, at the same time, I think there's nothing wrong with letting people, have some fun.
Of
From time
course.
to time, here you go, jump in, something different. It's good to keep attention. You have to always bring something new, something different, and you don't have to bring something completely new and forget about it the next day. You can mix and match. And that's another aspect that I want to talk about is the fact that sometimes I feel we as martial artists we get very focused on a certain aspect, and we work it till the end. Yes, 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 but then we kind of forget about everything else. Let me come back to that. So it's our skills are kind of gone, but then you work something else. You work something else that gets good, something else goes bad. So it's all about balance of different things.
Yeah.
And at least from my point of view nowadays, it's a three-pronged attack. Physical conditioning, it is martial art part of it, so kata, basics, everything else, and there's the applications.
Yeah.
So three-pronged attack. On all of these three, you cover your art part, you have your physical conditioning there, and you have applications so people get excited about it, and they know that it will work, which is I guess the topic of this.
For sure. I want to go back to the physical conditioning thing. I know we've mentioned this in like the first like couple of episodes here, and I've talked about this a lot. Um, a lot of times, like people who don't train martial arts or they have no experience in self-defense, their number one excuse, I say it's an excuse because everybody should know a little bit of self-defense. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't even have to be physical self-defense. It could be some of the strategic things we were talking about before. But the number one excuse I always get is that, oh, I would just run away. And I'm in pretty okay shape. Someone has been encouraging me to run recently more than I normally do. And I have to say, like the running away thing, unless you're practicing that thing and you are like the best sprinter ever, that is probably not a good plan. Because if you feel that you can't physically outmatch this person in a self defense context, it's getting physical. I don't think there's a lot of people that you'll be able to outrun that fit into that category as well. Do you know what I mean? So you're going to be
Yes,
running,
exactly.
running, running. You're going to gas yourself out after maybe 30 seconds. You're probably going to feel sick to your stomach because you've probably never forced yourself to run like that before. And then the person catches you and you have to deal with that. So the running thing kind of makes me nervous when people say that. The other thing you mentioned too about the physical conditioning and the strength is I actually find that as I've been working that more, I know I've mentioned it makes certain techniques easier. It also points you in the direction of what works for you. And I think this is another thing with application where, again, we're pretty fortunate where we kind of let people explore things and try things out and ask questions about it, which is really good. But when you do a kata, the kata is the way that the kata is supposed to be done. The way that you apply these techniques or the way that you apply your basics isn't going to be the same for everybody else. And when you physically condition your body, you're going to find out very quickly what type of movement skills will work for you. Like, I know for me, being a smaller, lighter person, we're doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Mount is not going to be my go to position, right? The amount of times I've taken Mount and the person will just like lift me up and like remove me just like without doing any technical escape. It's like, okay, so for me, I have to accept the fact that, okay, maybe there's a way for me to pursue Mount, but there's other things that I might be able to do better. And I wouldn't know that unless I have the, I guess, endurance to be able to carry through the application or the testing and the feedback and learn about that stuff.
Exactly, exactly. And you find out what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
That's the important part as well.
Sensei Fox says martial arts is as much a
In terms of
mental discipline as a physical that helps you train as hard on your own after Shonen. That's true. Um,
yeah, exactly,
you have to be disciplined to train after Shonen. Or at least have people
yeah,
around you that are disciplined,
to push you
encouraging you to
forward
be disciplined. Because
for sure.
it is true. Like you said, there's a tangible goal, which is the black belt. And people often look at it as the peak of the mountain, not realizing that there's a whole other, like several sets of mountains that you have to climb after. And they don't stick around long enough to figure that out. And again, because the training becomes more personalized and individualistic, people get discouraged. It's like, well, how come the instructor isn't holding my hand as much as they used to?
exactly, and that's the discipline thing is bang on right there. That's the perfect word to use it.
Yeah,
Um, and that's it is sad that not everyone gets to continue, but it's just people who have the discipline continue forward. Uh, in that sense, though, there's no shame in trying to help people go forward.
of
You know,
course.
if if you want to push them a bit further, and the beautiful part about I guess physical conditioning in that sense, they see it is that everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people go to the gym. You know, or a lot of people also join martial arts initially to get fit. That's
Right.
the thing. It's not always because they want to learn how to defend themselves. It's a nice bonus, but a lot of it is because physical conditioning.
Yeah,
And you can use that as kind of a not only a bait and switch, but as a kind of a motivation tool to help people continue going forward.
definitely.
Um, to train, and that's it's as Sensei said as well. It's all about it's a mix of everything. It's discipline, physical conditioning, and motivation going forward.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I guess this is a good place to transition to a different topic.
Okay.
Um, there's a there's a good another phrase that I like. I found been exploring lately. It's train like you fight.
Yeah.
So that is been a good motivation for me lately, in a sense that every time you're training, you want to push yourself more, try new things, and try to always make it as realistic as possible. Always is a strong word, but as often as you can.
Right.
This way, I feel, at least personally for me, it helped me to understand what will work and won't work. You know, Even if you look at kumite or sparring, it's not the same. It's really not the same. If you look at the way I look at martial arts and karate, there is the martial art part, which is your kata, kumite, your basics, sorry, kata basics. Then there's a sport, which is kumite,
Right.
sparring for points. Same with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is your randori for points. And there's the fighting aspect of it, which is, in my opinion,
Different.
which is the application.
Yeah.
It's not the only application, but it's the application. That's what you can use to defend yourself in a real world situation. And
Right.
so every time you train, your basics might not be the same as you would use in a fighting situations. But then you want to get as close as you can to that feeling of being in a situation. And how do you do that? You hit more and you try to hit harder. You see, okay, can you move faster? And you don't, sorry, let me backtrack a bit. Compared to Kumite, we always have a control because it's for points. If you fold
Right.
someone over, you're disqualified. Now, in real world, you don't get disqualified. You win and you go home. So while you're working that control in Kumite, you also want to be able to work the bag hard and fast as well and try to make sure that it works. And then at the same time, the big part about application is combining all the knowledge that you have to your advantage.
Right.
And by that I mean, in our dojo we do karate, we do BJJ, just some things there and there. So being able to have, for example, a match where sorry with kumite, but not everything goes, but contact is allowed. Not big contact, but still contact is allowed. So you
Right.
have that feeling of how it feels to get hit if you do get hit. But then anything goes. You can use your karate, you can go to BJJ, just go. And then you can see, okay, this didn't work, this doesn't work, but this works. Okay, what if the person has a knife? What if the person has a gun? What
Right.
are you going to do then? And that kind of takes away that illusion that I find personally I had actually after a while, where I think, oh, I do karate, I'll be fine. That's okay. I know how to sell. I know how to do the self defenses. I know how to kumite. I have my sparring experience. That's fine. But no, the real world is very much different than kumite is,
Yeah.
and being able to have that training experience where you're as close as you can to the real situation is, to me, I think it's one of the most important things, because that gives people confidence and the knowledge that these things will work.
Yeah.
So they don't, if they get into real situations, they don't freak out. And that's happens often because they say, oh, but I can do this. But in reality, though, what if the person knows Muay Thai, which
Right.
isn't, a lot of people these days do martial arts. It isn't out of the realm possibility.
Yeah.
What if they know something else? Like, how are you gonna act? So I think that's what personally I would like to spend more time on my own training. But I think that's a very important aspect of any martial art training.
Yeah. I think you're 100% correct because again, because we do so many different things here, like we do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we do karate, we do Okinawan Kabuto, we do, anti-bully tactics, street proof. We do all of these things in all their different capacities. And I think the thing that is necessary at the later levels in your training, because at the beginning stages, you want to practice everything in isolation to fully understand it, right? You don't want to confuse yourself. If you're really trying to learn like 2 or 3 martial arts all at the same time, it's going to be overwhelming. But I think too, because we spend so much time striving for that perfection, not realizing it's a direction, sometimes what happens is we train everything in isolation, but we forget to do the integration part, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
all of our self-defense, I'm 100% confident that they will work, whether it's the karate self-defenses or the Brazilian jiu-jitsu self-defenses. I'm 100% confident that our Brazilian jiu-jitsu techniques on the ground will work, our standing, striking, and kicking from karate will work. The issue is there's a bridge between all of these different points that can happen in a street fight, right? So if you're going to say, like, for example, I hear the analogy that like a lot of the competitive stuff is like playing human chess, right? And that is true in competition because everybody has the same pieces, the rules are the same, you've agreed upon what it
Yeah.
takes to win.
Exactly.
In the chaos of a fight, it's basically like saying, okay, we're gonna play chess, but at any point in time, someone can come along and just smack the board off the table. That's the way I look at a fight. It's
Yeah.
it's chaos. You don't know what the other person is going to do. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know how far they're willing to go. And to be able to analyze that in a split second, unless you're thinking about this constantly, you're not going to be able to do it under pressure the first time it happens, right?
Exactly. And that's what the whole thing training comes from, right?
Yeah,
You have to train so you get that mentality. You don't get scared. You just go and you know what you're doing.
exactly. One of the main questions I always get, especially when I go and I teach like high school courses, is have you ever had to use self defense? Have you ever had to use your martial arts in a real situation? And of course, anybody who's ever trained before, the answer is going to be yes. Maybe if you don't realize it. And like, oh, so you've been in like a street fight before? I'm like, whoa, street fight? No, no, no. I've talked people down that are trying to fight other people. Maybe I've left a situation before things went south. Obviously when you're a kid and bullying is happening, sometimes you get into those little skirmishes or whatever, and you do what's necessary so you can get up and escape, right? But to say that, yeah, I've squared up in the street and brawled a guy until he's unconscious, like, no, I have not done that. That is at the furthest end of what martial arts is going to teach you about self-defense. If I ever got to that point, I would consider myself a failure of self-defense. It should never get that far. And I think that's one thing that a lot of beginners need to understand, that there's so many things about self-defense that's not physical. So there's no need to be intimidated by the fact that, yeah, when you come in and we start doing physical stuff, you might have to take some punches to the abs. You might have to take some kicks to the legs. You might get punched in the face a couple times by mistake. If you're a guy, you're going to get cracked in the nuggets a couple times. It's going to happen, right? I think there's a misconception that we're just going to throw you in the deep end and you're going to get some big, huge guy just come and start like pounding you. It's like, no, we start systematically, and it's like, okay, like even with the kids, I do this drill with them, like when they're old enough to, do this, where we'll do like palm strikes to the core just to get them used to that impact. And I'll say start with like no power and let the student decide how much they're ready to take. So they'll say more, more, more. And like 99% of the time, they're surprised at how much they can actually take. And I think that's one of the big things where when you brace yourself for a strike coming in, you can actually take it. It's when you're caught off guard. And again, like you were saying, that's where the training comes in, because when it happens to you in training, you're not going to be caught off guard. You're going to be so used to it happening that it's like, yeah, that happened, no big deal.
That could just an automatic response.
Yeah,
And that's the thing in the contact training. That's another part of it.
I
Was
like
a
contact
great
training.
like exactly, yeah, like even the difference is we're sparring, but it's not sparring. In sparring, you can, at least in karate, for those who are not aware, if you're watching, you can hit below the belt. Usually, back is off limits, but depends on the rules. And like limited contact, so not too much. But then, let's say if you're doing like application fighting style sparring, say if you have shin guards, yeah, sure, legs, go ahead. Charlie horse, let's go. Shins, yeah, why not? That kind of level. So kind of anything goes. And that's why I find if we don't work much of application, um, then we just focus on sparring, that the upper level body. A lot of times, like I mean, even personally, I noticed that I'm not hitting to the legs at all.
Yeah.
I'm hitting always above the belt. I'm barely making any contact. Because I know, like, hey, if I hit him hard, then I'm disqualified. And I'm just here for points. And it got to a point where it's so ingrained in you that even when I'm hitting the bag, I'm just like light touching. I'm not hitting
Right.
low, and you don't know. I don't know how it feels like to get hit there either. And that's what I think can really throw people off guard if it were to happen in real life. That's people should train.
Yeah.
And good point about the martial arts being more than just physical. It really is, and that's what I feel like personally in a lot of cases is the definition of martial art. It is an art. It's not a fighting style. It is part of a fight style, but it's a martial art. With it comes philosophy. With it comes more theory, which can help. And as you said, a lot of not sure who said it, but a lot of martial artists do tend to avoid confrontations because they have the confidence that they can finish it if they have to,
Right.
but they know better that this shouldn't happen in the first place. They can talk people down, and they can walk away, which is I guess a funny oxymoron, I believe.
Yeah.
Right, that you're training martial arts, and yet you are much better at avoiding fights than most people.
I think that comes from just education, right? Like once you've been
Yes,
training long enough and you realize there's a lot of things that I can do to mess someone's quality of life up badly. Like some of the techniques that you learn in karate, in jujitsu, it's like if you fully apply these techniques on another human being, like you're going to change the course of their life. And I think once you start to realize like, oh my god, like these things are actually possible to do and they actually work, um, I think it builds a level of compassion in you where it's like I don't want to fight. I've seen what these things can do. I've learned about the effect this can have on a person physically and mentally. It's like I don't want to be in that situation. Like, and I think now when that happens and we start to do contact drills, I can speak for myself with this. I don't like hitting people. Like we'll do like contact drills like you and me, and like it's not that I'm scared I'm gonna hurt you. I know you can take a punch, um, but there's something in the back of my head that's like, don't hit him. He's your friend. Don't hit him. And I'll punch you, and you'll look at me like, what are you doing? Don't insult me. Hit me. Come on. And it's funny because I'm the same way. If I'm working with one of the kids or one of the other adults, and they hit me, and I'm like, come on, I can take more than that, not realizing that they're probably doing the same thing I'm doing. Where it's like I don't want to hurt this person, I don't want to hit this person, but in order for them to become prepared, it's something that I think is necessary. Whether it's
yeah,
a light hit, or if you're more advanced with it and you're more conditioned to it, then you can start to go a little bit harder that way. But again, the misconception being that we're just going to start beating each other with sticks for no reason. There's a systematic approach to it that has to be in place for safety, because when we start getting into application, you have to protect your partner, right? You have to make sure that
exactly.
if you're sparring them, if you're the superior practitioner and you have the advantage over the person you're working with, it's your responsibility to make sure that person is safe so they can come back and train with you again. Same thing with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Like their biggest thing is like protect your partner all the time. Um, so it's kind of this balancing act between like safety and then having the confidence to know that something's going to work. And the more you strive to make things realistic, the more the safety starts to go down, and that's where your skill set comes into play, where if you
Exactly.
don't have years and years behind this art, you're going to hurt somebody really badly, especially under pressure.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think you know yourself that a lot of injuries come from people who are not experienced with it and they don't know how to control.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Nobody
they make you.
the One of the first pieces of advice that I got when I started teaching was nobody is going to hurt you as much as someone who's scared of you or someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And oh
Yeah,
my gosh, when I've worked with like beginners at like high schools, or even like people that come in to like try a class or something, and let's say we're doing something like stick drills or even just like casual, simple Brazilian jiu-jitsu techniques, I've never been hurt by a black belt, right? I've never been hurt by a brown belt. Um, I've been like stung a couple times by mistake.
right.
Things happen, but I've never
Hmm.
been like, oh man, that like took a toll on me. Everything that's ever happened in terms of like not an injury, but being hurt, I should say, is always from someone who's like nervous working with me because they think like, oh, he's a big bad black belt. He's gonna like destroy me, and it's like, no, relax. I'm here to work with you. Or they don't know that they don't know, and they're just like doing stuff because they want to, be at the skill level that they see other people working at. It's like, take your time. It's okay.
Oh, exactly, and that's where the whole experience comes in, right?
Yeah.
So, and good points. So I had something in my mind, but actually I escaped me right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, bringing realism to the training. I feel like that's an important aspect of it. That's where their application will really shine through. That's where you know if it's gonna work or not. And then integrate, as you said, is self integration of everything together. We work it separately, put it together, and see if it works now, and see what else can come up.
Right.
Um,
For me,
another,
I
yeah,
look at it kind
go
of like
ahead.
a flow chart. Like I
Flowchart.
look at kind of like a cycle where you
Mhm.
have like integration, and then that leads, or sorry, isolation at the beginning. That leads to integration where you start to kind of put things together. You put it
Mhm.
into application, then you get feedback, then you go back to
And then
isolation,
you refine,
and you just keep
exactly. It's
going
a
in the circle and
refinement,
circle and circle
exactly,
and make yourself dizzy and crazy.
exactly. And at that point, that's I feel like that's the I guess for the physical part at least, that's where you're well rounded.
Yeah.
You're well rounded as a martial artist and knows the physical, knows the theory, but they can also apply it to the situations where needed. But do you still have the training gun you were showing me, the blue one, on you right now, or no?
The water pistol.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, it's in my drawer here. Are we allowed to show that on YouTube?
I mean, it is a water pistol.
It's a water pistol. FBI,
So,
don't come after me.
kind of to draw a point here. So, if you just show it, just quickly. So, imagine you work in gun self defense with this. You work this over and over and over again, and you're so used to seeing this blue gun being pointed at you. And you're like, oh no, that's a safe environment. Everyone's happy, kumbaya, and all that stuff, right? Um, and then you get used to it, right? And then at some point, imagine if you're in the real situation, or like if you are not used to that and you see some real gun,
Yeah.
will you perform the same, or knowing that hey, this looks way more real, and like you might not know it's real, but it looks real. Will you perform the same?
Right.
And I think I've heard the statistics somewhere, but a lot of times where people get held at gunpoint, the police reports usually they can, the people who get held at gunpoint can actually recite almost like the down to serial number of the weapon, because
Yeah.
they really focus on that and know what it is because they get freaked out. So in order to avoid that, how do we make it so that if something like that were to happen, hopefully not, how do we react accordingly, that we're not panicking, now we get there? We do that by bringing realism into our training. So first we work the technique over and over and over again, get smoothed. Okay, now let's make it real.
Right.
How can we bring as close as as possible? So multiple attackers. Some first you're working with a stick, then you can work with a kind of rubber knife that looks realistic. For the weapon, it needs something like this. So that's not a real gun, just YouTube FBI. That is an airsoft version. But then imagine this: someone in your training, you first work with a blue one, then someone pulls this. It looks real. It functions like real, not really. It doesn't shoot bullets, shoots small little plastic pellets. So you're safe.
Right.
But this is as close as you can get to it looking realistic. And then you can work scenarios. Someone's holding you a gunpoint for your wallet,
Right.
or you hear that click, you look at it, it looks real, and so your body adapts accordingly. And then once you work this enough, somewhere in the world, if it were to happen, hopefully not again, I think at that point, you are not going to be surprised because you worked with a thing that's as close as you can to that situation,
Yeah. And
and that applies to everything.
I think one thing too, not so much with the weapon self defense. I have a story actually that I want to share about you, if it's okay.
Of course, go ahead.
So I'll get to that in a second. But one thing I was gonna say too, in terms of like self defense, when we train certain techniques, I think a lot of times too, we don't. Obviously now the internet is a thing, and people are more aware of the different things in terms of techniques. Like very rarely now are you still see a lot of overhand rights that are just like big huge like swinging punches, but with all the YouTube content out there, with all the things in movies now, like most people now probably know, get your hands up, keep your elbows in, and throw straight. Most people by now should know that, even if you've never
Right.
trained before, right? But on top of that, a lot of times too, when we attack each other like martial artists. And
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
I was actually thinking about this. if your martial art truly is focused on self-defense, I think by the time you get to like the middle ranks, you should have enough gross motor skills to handle someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. After that point, you're really just learning how to defeat other people in your martial art. You know what I mean? Like the jujitsu
I
that
would
we
say,
do
bro.
under Master Bearing, they're very self defense focused, and like with the amount of information that they give you on self defense, I feel confident that by the time you like probably even before purple belt, you're able to take on anybody out there using their techniques. At that point, after it's just like, well, how do I tap out this other purple belt? How do I tap out this other brown
Right,
belt
right,
or
right, right.
whatever it is?
Mhm.
Same thing with karate, right? By the time you get to like blue or brown, you should be comfortable enough to strike your way out of a physical confrontation. After that, it's just like, well, this black belt is faster than me and stronger than me. I want to see if I can keep up with them. And it becomes that back and forth there. I think
Yeah.
the story that I wanted to tell, going back to weapon self defense, about making
Hmm.
it more realistic. I can't remember who it was that was grading for their black belt. I was like a blue belt sitting in the audience, and they had to do a gun self defense demo, and they asked you to hold the gun and do the attack. And I'll never forget this as long as I live, because up until that point, like you had been teaching me, and you were always very like calm, patient, you know, the very casual, like easygoing instructor that really knows what he's doing but never like yells. And I remember you took the rubber gun on the guy and you started like yelling and screaming. I was like, is this guy a cop undercover? What's going on? And I remember sitting on the chair and I wasn't expecting that at all. I was sitting there on the chair watching the grading and you started yelling and I remember like I flinched. I like jumped and I'm like, whoa, that's actually like really, really good. And I know like when we practice like some of these self defenses, we'll like yell at each other, we'll like do all of that stuff. And I think that that is another huge component where the verbalizing at all the different levels, right? You can have a creepy person coming up to you being really quiet and it's really awkward and scary in that sense, or you can have someone that's really loud and explosive and that's scary for a number of different reasons. But being able to compose yourself, um, the challenge of course is when you do this with people you train with and that you know them well enough, you start laughing, you know,
Yeah, that.
partway through,
Yeah.
which I think is another thing that I want to address. Sometimes people get accustomed to training with the same person over and over again. And that's important at the beginning because you want to make yourself comfortable, right? Once you know enough, though, your goal as a martial artist should be to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, right? Like you can't always be working with a person that you know that you can work with and kind of take it easy and this and that. You want to work with people that you're kind of nervous to work with. Like I remember Sempai Young is here. He's like, you're right on the gun stats. I had one pointed in my face before I started to train. I could tell you more about the gun than the person holding. Oh wow, I didn't know that. We have to get him to
Wow,
tell that story when he
that's
comes on
yeah.
here.
Hold that story.
That's
We'll
a
get back to
story
it.
for a podcast for sure. But speaking of Senpai, I remember the first time I had to spar him. I never sparred him before, and he's like, for those of you who don't know, he's tall, like he's big, he's a big dude, and I'm not. I'm very much not. And I know he's not going to hurt me, but just the fact that I've never worked with someone that tall before, it was a different experience altogether. And yeah, I ate a couple of front kicks, I ate a couple of reverse punches and everything. Rightly so. I mean, the man's been training like as long as I've been alive. But just the context of saying like, have you ever sparred someone who towers over you? And most of the kids can say yes when they spar their instructor, but adults, have you ever really done that? Um, I don't know. That's the thing too. So train with people that intimidate you, not because of their personality. Like Senpai Young's a really nice guy, but when he stands in front of you with the gloves on, if your heart's not beating a little bit faster, something's wrong with you mentally. Like same thing with Sensei D. Same thing with Sensei D too. Even Senpai Toin, when she's standing in front of you with the gloves and she's got that stare, it's kind of scary, and you need to, I think you need to have that, you need to have those like cues in there where it's like it's not just about the skill level but the person's demeanor, the way that they carry themselves when they're sparring or when they're doing the self-defense. um, Being accustomed to that, being accustomed to the loud, being accustomed to the soft, and just kind of balancing everything out. Toyin's laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I guess if I can summarize, it's just put yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, and get comfortable with it.
Yeah,
That's how you improve, right? You push past your comfort limit.
for
And
sure.
I just want to make another point about what you said earlier about vocalizing. That's very important as well. And
Yeah,
we do teach that about the fact that you know as we usually train the self defense, no one's going to be there quietly, just here, grab your hand, go get out. It's going to be screaming. There's going to be something else. You should be vocalizing, get other people's attention.
right.
Because again, going back to myself, I found that I guess around showdown time, where if I were to self defense, I had a feeling that if I were to do it out in real world, I would just do my silent self defense, be like, "Hey guys, okay, I'm out of my," But in reality, it should be, "Hey, stop!" and
Yeah,
call it loud, give people's attention, and that's how you don't even have to say anything. Just someone's trying to come up to you, just say, "Hey," really loud, like
yeah,
almost eye level.
that
That's
works.
it. No physical need. Just call them out. Hey, what are you doing?
That works.
And that's it. That should stop most of it. That goes back to the whole idea with non-physical.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
I have a story about that actually.
oh, go ahead.
So this was at the previous dojo we trained at, and
Mhm.
if any of the kids are watching, I think most of them were actually like most of the kids that would be watching, they were probably there when this happened, so they probably remember this happening. So I was there. I was teaching classes, and we had a young boy and a young girl who were doing classes with me. They finished their class, and usually their older brother would come and pick them up, and they would just kind of walk home. They live not too far from the dojo. So we finished the class. I'm up at the front. I'm doing whatever paperwork or whatever. And the older brother like comes like running down the stairs, and he's kind of like huffing and puffing. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's like a dude following me, and I didn't know what to do." And I'm like, "Okay, well, come inside. Where is he or whatever?" And this guy comes down the stairs. He's an older guy, and if you ask me what he looks like now, I couldn't tell you. He's coming down the stairs, and basically what had happened was the older brother bumped into this guy by mistake, and he was late to pick up the kids. So he just kind of looked at him and he kind of waved to say sorry, and then just kind of ran off. So the guy obviously misinterpreted, and the place that can't be named. Oh God, Senpai Young said that. So sorry. So he's like, I'm running late to pick up my brother and my sister. So he runs to the dojo. That's why he's out of breath. And so the guy misunderstood, and he probably thought that this guy just like bumped him and like thought it was funny and just kind of ran off. So first of all, if that ever happens to you, like walk away. It's not a big deal. Like someone bumped you a little bit, like it's okay. So this guy comes down the stairs and he starts, yelling at the kid. And the kid was probably like 15 years old. He's not like an older brother. He's like a teenager. And I could see on the kid's face that he was nervous about this guy. And I said, "Hang on, like, sir, what are you like? What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, is he one of your students? Like, is this what you teach your students to do?" And da, da, da. I'm like, "Hang on, hang on. First of all, he's not one of my students. Second of all, I don't know who you are. I don't even know what's happened. You're coming down into a place where there's children here, and you're starting to yell and you're starting to swear and use profanity. Like, that's not appropriate right now. You need to leave." And he kind of like took a step back, but he was still angry. He was still like trying to get his thing out. And all I did was I just said like, "Hey," really loud, and all the kids were like, "What?" And I grabbed the phone. I didn't even do anything. I just picked up the phone and I said, "You need to leave right now, or I'm calling the police." And the look of fear on his face, he just turned around and kind of walked away. He's like cussing under his breath as he's going up the stairs and everything. And he goes upstairs and the kids come out or whatever, and they're just like, "Whoa, that was like intense." And I'm like, "You guys have heard me be way louder than that. Like, we're doing, whatever in class. Like, I can be louder than that." That was just enough to like startle him, to get him to, stop talking, listen for a second, and realize that you're in a place with children, you're making threats, and you're mad because a 16-year-old kid like bumped into you for a second a little bit. So yeah, the voice thing,
Yeah.
the amount of times, especially when you have a calm demeanor and then you just explode with a loud voice, that's really what a kiai is. That makes a huge impact on people that are not really willing to fight, but they think that they are.
Exactly. It gets them out of the element.
Yeah,
No, that's an important part, and I think we do teach that in a way that if you're fighting a taekwondo guy, what are you gonna do? You're gonna come close and you're gonna use your hands instead, break them out of their element.
right.
And same thing here. You use the element of surprise, I like to say it,
Yeah,
which is you use your voice like they don't expect that. They don't expect that kind of response to that. And there we go. There's your entire soul defense.
yeah,
A single punch. Oh, nothing else needs to be done. Just voice.
yeah,
And that's what a successful self defense is. And that's like this application right there as well.
yeah. So we've gone full circle. So we have a couple minutes left. If people have questions, you can enter them in the comments.
Yeah, let's get to that actually.
Yeah, and then the other thing I was going to mention too, so if anybody's interested in making a donation, you can just e-transfer it to the dojo, or I usually stick around for about 15 minutes after the call is done. If you want to call in and like do it that way, that's fine as well. And the other thing I was going to mention, for anybody that trains at the dojo is in like the York region area, if you want martial arts equipment, the suppliers are open again, but they've marked everything up quite a bit. I can use like I don't mark things up as much as they do. I have my dojo discount that I get from them, but I don't mark it up near as much because I think that's way too expensive. I wouldn't pay for that. So if anybody needs like focus mitts to train at home with their kids or whatever, if anyone wants like kick shields, weapons, I have my punny T-shirts and everything. So if that's the case, I know we still have to isolate. Like contact me ahead of time. We'll set up a time and day for you to come pick up whatever you need to get, place your order, and that way, like until the dojo is able to open again, at least you can kind of complete your at-home dojo, and continue your training from there. Because there's no excuse not to train. You're basically limited to your creativity. Um, so yeah, let's see. No questions yet. Do you have any questions?
Do I have questions?
Yeah, we got a couple minutes.
No, I have comments.
Tons.
Oh no, hold on.
I think you're frozen.
As for
There we
this,
go.
okay, few comments. So, train like you fight. Okay, that's one. Physical conditioning. No, that's probably one of the best things you can do, especially during this time.
Yeah.
Dojo is closed. Just run. Honestly, run. Calisthenics, body weight exercises. They'll go a long, long way. And as Sensei or myself won't lie to you. Working on the bag for a minute, that cardio right there, you can get it by running.
Oh yeah.
Same thing. Same thing. And then, so physical conditioning, cardio, and then just put some realism to your training. No, be
Yeah.
confident yourself that your training will work. That's I guess my takeaway point from here. Don't fool yourself. Just for different people, if you do your basics and you feel like, yeah, this is gonna work, that's good for you. For you, you're confident.
Yeah.
For others, try to put yourself in a situation when you're training so that you know for sure this will work.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I would say is important for everybody to do, obviously in a respectful way, is I know like old school karate, it's like you're not allowed to ask a question of the sensei what he's teaching you. And again, I think that kind of shields a lot of the critical thinking that should be happening with martial arts. So again, obviously don't be pestering the instructor during a class. Like if you have stuff you have to get through, like learn the technique, do it, practice it. But don't be afraid to ask questions about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. When would you do it? And things like that. Not only will it open up the other students to start thinking that way as well, but it reinforces the instructor's confidence because they should have an answer for that. If they don't, they're going to go back, they're going to study the technique some more, they're going to think about it, and they're going to get back to you if they're a good instructor. Like, the amount of times like the kids are really good for this. If you ever want to have questions thrown at you where you're like, I've never even thought of that, go to a kids class, volunteer in a kids class, or teach a kids class about self-defense, and just wait for some of the questions that they ask you. And there's been a couple times where I'm just like, give me a day or two to think about that and I'll give you an answer. And I love when that happens because now I get to learn something new as well. And it's something where everybody has their different perspectives. And I'm not going to be able to perform the same techniques that you're going to perform well. Vice versa. I'm not going to be able to do the same techniques that other, children are going to be able to perform better than we will, or vice versa, right? There's certain things that we're going to do better as adults, there's certain things that are going to do better as kids. And once you kind of realize that your perspective and your confidence is the most important for you, the way you perceive your abilities, your confidence level in what you're doing. You also have to look at the perspective of other people because that will ultimately open up your eyes to different possibilities that you never thought of before. And again, like I think one of the last things we can touch on here is don't be afraid to, go on YouTube and look at other martial arts and say, well, what is this boxing guy doing that I can add to my karate? What is this, judo person doing that I can add to my jujitsu? What is this, kickboxing guy doing that I can add to, some of my self-defense techniques? And not everything is going to be cohesive. And with experience, you'll be able to have the knowledge to say, okay, that's very good for what they do. That's not going to work for us, right? Or we should be doing that. Why aren't we doing that? And you study it, you train it. When you're confident, you bring it to the the class or whatever it is. So in a nutshell, I would say the most important thing you can do as a martial artist who's been training for enough time to feel confident in what you're doing, start to question what you're doing. Not because you want to disprove it, but
Yes.
because you want to build a higher level of confidence, a higher level of understanding so that you can apply those techniques efficiently.
I 100% agree.
So
100%
trust
agree.
your instructor, but also question him once in a while. Respectfully.
Question everything. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Yeah,
Good job.
exactly.
Exactly.
All right, Senpai, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. I think we'll try to get Senpai Young to come on and tell that gun story. I want to hear that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so Senpai
And
Young,
also,
I will be contacting you shortly. Be ready.
and one last time, if anyone wishes to donate, goes to a good cause, please send your EMTs, email transfers to shoshindojo.ca. Thank you very much for having
Yes.
me on here.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe. And I know there's a lot of chaos going on. If you are involved in, some of the protesting, please protest. Please don't loot. I have a small business. I don't want anyone to break my windows. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not part of the cause, right? Support the cause, but don't be reinforcing the bad things that should not be happening. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah.
Start running.
Yes, everyone
Don't
go
forget to start
run.
running.
Everyone go run right now.
Beautiful day outside.
Beautiful day outside, exactly. All right, enjoy your weekend, Senpai. Everybody
Thank you
else,
very
thank you
much.
for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for donations. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See y'all later.
How do I end this again? Oh, yeah, there we go. All right, see you later.